So what we found over this about 6-month period was how crazy busy we were and how exhausted we actually were. But I also think it's really important to talk about this stuff because we can all learn from it. My New Year's resolution, my word for this year is margin. My second word for this year is connection. Margin and connection. That's what I've learned. One of our values and agreements with my wife and I is we never... Let me ask you something. When was the last time you took a good look in the mirror and faced the truth of things that were going on in your life that you weren't proud of? And I'm not talking about the highlight reel that you post on social media. I'm talking about the cracks and the potholes in your life, the things that you're not even paying attention to, but you keep tripping on. Not to mention the fact that you're probably stuffing it down. And if you're like most men, you are stretched thin as hell. You are very, very busy. You're busy in your marriage. You're busy in your business. You're busy with the kids, their activities. It's mad chaos at times. But here's the kicker. That busyness, it's a silent killer. It destroys connection, peace, and patience, and we have no idea until the damage is done. Today, I'm here to tell you guys a story, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to share a story about myself and about my experience, and it's an account and it's a testimonial of things that just get way too busy, way too crazy, and it wears thin on our patience. And unfortunately, I hit a breaking point. A season of overwhelm left me yelling at my kids more than I wanted to. It left me disconnected from my wife, and I even started questioning, do I even deserve to do this work? If you've ever felt guilt or shame or the weight of trying to be everything to everyone, this episode is for you because let's face it, if we don't course correct, it's not just us who suffers, it's the people that we love most. So today, I've got a story for you. I'm going to peel back the curtain and I'm going to let you guys in on some of the disastrous things that have happened in my life that luckily I got in front of before things got really, really bad. If we're not careful about how busy we get as a family, within our marriage, or even within ourselves, like some bad things could happen. And they're so sneaky. If you guys have ever been in a situation where your marriage kind of like took a bit of a turn, maybe you were more trigger happy on your patience. Maybe you were quicker to anger. Maybe you had a blow up in front of your family and you're just guilt ridden with shame and guilt ridden with shame and guilt, right? That's even a thing. Today's podcast is for you. So, like I said in the intro, this is Friday Fumbles, first downs, and field goals. And today is a fumble. I've dedicated this Friday for those three things: screw ups, things we're doing pretty well that are moving things down the field, and big wins where we put points on the board. And my goal is to be super authentic and vulnerable with you guys and give you guys a peek behind the curtain of all the great things that are happening in my own life and some of the absolute face plants I've done. And retrospectively, I reverse engineer the entire situation, the week, the month, the season, whatever it is that we were going through. And I look for the breadcrumbs of like, what went wrong? What did I not see? What happened here? So I'm going to share a story with you guys today. And it's not something I am proud of whatsoever at all. And this is where I think another thing happens to us as men, just human beings alone. When we have a few things that are going really well in our life, like areas in our life that are going really well, could be in our job, could be financially, could be physically, could be whatever. We tend to think that everything is going okay. And other areas of our life will just sort of like come along for the ride and be okay too. And then suddenly we get a humble pie right in the face of like, hey, you really kind of suck right now with your irritability. You really kind of suck right now with how reactive you are. You're way more angry than what you used to be. You're losing your patience with the kids more than what you used to be. You're distant from me. Things like that. And you're like, wait, what? And so I'm going to share a story. And I think maybe some of you guys or all of you guys might relate to this to some degree. So I'm going to share how I've had a really tough, I would say, 6 months in a couple of areas of my life. And I've had amazing areas of my life where things have gone really well. And because those areas of my life were going so well, I thought everything was going okay. But here's the funny thing. I knew that they weren't, but I just thought they weren't as bad as they were. So let me back up and tell you what happened. I'm going to start with what happened here recently and what kind of like led up to that. If you look at the month of December and January, I had a lot of things, I would say, under my own roof kind of come to a head, with my kids and my wife. And it had a lot to do with my stress level. I would say also my wife's stress level. And we as a family, and me, I would say big time, didn't handle it very well. In fact, I got exhausted, I got overwhelmed, and I didn't handle things well. And I had a couple blowups with my family. So much so, and I'll be very honest with you, so much so that I got to the point where I was so disappointed in myself that one day after a blowup I had over what our dog did to our couch, I went in my office and actually broke down, because I was like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like all this really bad negative self-talk, like, I can't believe, like, who are you as a father? Like, who are you to talk about patience? Like, who are you to even do this work? Like, I was like I felt like the biggest imposter on the planet. I also have to remind myself that just because I do this work, that doesn't mean that I'm going to execute flawlessly. And I had a good mentor of mine tell me this. He's like, we don't expect Michael Jordan to hit every shot. You don't expect some of the greatest hitters in baseball to hit a home run or even get a hit every time they're at bat. Their average is just higher than normal. That's what makes them great. So, but I expect, as a father and a husband, and I don't know why I expect this of myself, and maybe you guys can relate to it, but I expect myself to always execute with minimal, if any, mistakes, which is ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I'm setting the bar for perfection, not progress. I'm setting the bar for perfection, which is impossible. So when mistakes happen, they get amplified because my standard is so high that, quite frankly, a lot of times it's unattainable. So let me share with you what happened. In my marriage, over the past 6 months, Jessica and I have, I would say, we normally operate on a scale of 1 to 10. I would say we operate at about a 9. Things are good, man. I will admit, things are very, very good. Like, I love her. I'm crazy about her. She loves me. She's crazy about me. We have great communication. We have a great sex life. We're aligned on parenting. We have the same interests. We both love to work out. We both love to hike. We both love to try new places to eat. We both love to go. We both love to travel. We have so much in common and so many great things going for us that sometimes I take my eye off of that relationship because I'm like, oh, it's great. It doesn't need a whole lot of work. And that is the wrong approach. So I felt this in my marriage over the past 6 months because Jessica and I would say we went from like a 9 to like a 6 or maybe like a 5.5. And it was just really weird. And when you normally operate at a high level and things are compromised, you're like, what is going on? The other thing too, with my kids, I would say on a normal basis, I operate as far as like raising 4 boys, the amount of stress, the amount of busyness that comes my way. I think I handle it decently well in most seasons. But in some seasons where I'm insanely taxed, insanely stressed, and there's a lot going on, like that 7 or 8 drops to like a 3. And I become more reactive. I become less patient. I speak to them probably more directly, more like with my wife would call a bark, right? Where I'm stern, right? So let me paint a picture of what happened. In the past 18 years of us raising kids, Jess and I have never, ever, ever had a season like we had in the fall leading all the way up to Christmas. And still to some degree, we're still kind of in it. So normally, my oldest son is in the marching band in high school. So every Friday night, he's in the marching band. Well, this past year, he was the drum major. So he was leading the entire high school band, which was awesome. And this is last year. And we wanted to make sure we were at every single game possible. My junior, his little brother, actually not so little, it's his younger, bigger brother, is the starting center for the football team. So Friday Night Lights was a big deal for our family, right? Never miss a game, ever, no matter what, right? One of our values and agreements with my wife and I is we never miss a thing, ever, like ever. You got a Christmas concert, we're there. You got a Christmas party at school, we're there. You got a football game, we're there. You got a hockey game, we're there. You got a hockey practice, we're there. We watch and do everything. And this past season, we not only had the two older ones, which is normal. They've done this every year in high school. And the little guys will normally do sports or activities in the spring. So we got two that are busy in the fall, which is pretty darn manageable. And then we got two that are busy in the spring, which is super manageable. This past year, my fifth grader decided he wanted to follow in his big bro's footsteps and do tackle football. That's super busy. 3 kids, 2 of them in football full time, 1 of them in marching band. That's a lot already. Add to it, my 8-year-old just got this wild hair and he's like, I think I want to play hockey. And I know all you guys who are hockey parents out there are probably laughing because the biggest secret out there is if you have a kid playing hockey, you suddenly have a part-time job, even if you're not the coach. Like these travel schedules, the practice schedules, the ice time, the games, like it's for 8U hockey. I could not believe how demanding it was. So for like ever since August until we're still kind of in it because football's over, but now we have a hockey player and a wrestler. And hockey is super busy and wrestling meets, you're there all day long or all night long, depending on when these meets are. And there's 2 or 3 a week. There's also 2 or 3 hockey practices a week and there's a game on the weekends. We're still just scattered in every direction. So my wife and I, we love watching the kids do their stuff. Like we really do. But what we found was over the past 6 months is life got really crazy and it got really stressful. And my wife would go in one direction, I would go in the other. Hey, you got hockey, I got wrestling. Hey, you got football, I got band. Hey, you got this, I got that. And we were like ships passing in the night. And here's the funny thing, like our relationship started to distance a little bit, which stressed both of us out because we don't like that. We like to be connected. We like to be intimate. We like to, spend time together. We didn't have a whole lot of time. On top of it, running a full-time business, I've got 80 people that work for me to some capacity. I podcast, I have one-on-one clients, I have coaching, facilitating group coaching calls. I think a lot of people think my life is glamorous because I'm a business owner. It's extremely busy. Ask my assistant, she's like, there is no margin in your calendar sometimes. Like for me to schedule something there's like hardly any margin. Like you're always busy. And I would say that ramped up over the past 6 months. So super busy in the organization. The organization has done extremely well this past season. So the business was doing great and the organization was doing awesome. So of course I'm like feeling great about that. On top of it, that area of my life, right? So like, let's talk about areas of our lives. The area of our lives where men make an income, it's really important to us, right? Because that income is what provides for our families. It's what it puts food on the table, right? It puts a roof over our head. And when things are going well in the workplace, men feel like life is going well. And that's the way I felt. Another area of my life that was going really, really well was my physical body. So like I've sustained a certain level of fitness here lately that's been fantastic. And I've loved it. And that's where I don't drink alcohol anymore. I eat super healthy. I train. My body fat's low. Like I feel good. So those 2 areas, right? Physical body, business, going great. Family life, crazy busy. Business, crazy busy on top of it. So what we found over this about 6-month period was how crazy busy we were and how exhausted we actually were. Like we didn't even realize how much on fumes my wife and I was. We just kept going and kept going and kept going. And we knew we were tired, but we just kept going because we also felt like it was a season, like we were kind of on a high with our kids. We just loved all the stuff that was going on, even though it was crazy busy. Well, we found that our date nights got further and farther between. So like we normally every Friday day, we go for a date day. Well, things got really busy and we weren't able to do that all the time. We also found time with our kids, like so actual family time, like just family time, playing games, eating dinner together. We're a family that prides ourselves on eating dinner together. That was happening maybe once a week. And we're like, what is going on here? So that was kind of a stress too, right? On top of it, the holidays. And the holidays can be very, very stressful for people in general. And it's even more frustrating because everyone's telling you, this is the most magical time of year. It's the happiest time of year. And you're like, why am I so stressed? Like, I'm buying presents, like financially it's killing me. It's cold outside. There's not as much sunlight. Like a lot of things really challenge us. Plus, like if you're a business owner, like your taxes are due by the end of the year, like you're trying to get your books in order. Like there's a lot of moving pieces, right? On top of it, here's one other thing too. Up until I guess it was September of this past year, I had the shittiest self-employed health insurance I think known to man. It was terrible. Every single family member in my family had a $5,000 deductible, and it was basically for, catastrophic health insurance. And it was still expensive, $1,800 a month for this horrible insurance. And I would take my son to the ER because he needed something, and I'd get a $3,000 bill. I'm not even kidding. Basically, we were paying for health insurance, but until we met that deductible, everything we were paying was out of pocket in cash. So you do the math, 6 times 5,000. And we're not meeting any deductibles. And that's a lot of money going out after I've already paid for insurance. My wife would just get like literally up to the point where she's like, I don't even want to go out to the mailbox because if I see anything medical in an envelope, I'm going to lose my mind. I won't even want to open it. And so we had like medical bills that were just like piling up. And I'm talking about like just from like doctor bills or, hey, this kid injured himself. He needs an x-ray. Oh, that's thousands. Or I needed knee surgery. That was thousands. Like it was crazy, like how much money was going out for medical bills. So that was stressful. So all of these things happening, what I found in me is I would become more irritable, but I would also look at things and be like, well, the business is doing great. Like physically I'm in shape. Like we're still married. Like things are going good. Kids are in all these sports. They're loving it. Like we're loving it. Like we're good, right? We're good. I was kidding myself. I was absolutely kidding myself. There was no margin in anybody's life, not even the kids' lives. I mean, like they would get off of their school bus and within 20 minutes, we were in the car going to whatever practice they had to go. Like we were running everyone ragged. The kids were run ragged. We were run ragged, and nobody was, quite frankly, very happy. And what I found is I was, like I said, more reactive. I yelled at my kids more. I was apologizing. I felt like every weekend. And this is kind of the moral of the story. My wife gave me some really tough feedback. She's like, I can't remember a weekend in the last 6 weeks where you weren't angry or you weren't distant or cold or something pissed you off or you had a moment where you yelled at somebody. And here's where all this came. And she was absolutely right. I was maxed and I was reactive. And here's the funny thing. I thought it was justified. Like that was the other thing I was telling myself. Like if my kid's room wasn't clean, I'd blow up. Right. And trust me, my kids know that what chores need to be done, but if they weren't doing them, instead of handling it in a responsive way, or even maybe calm way, I would get really pissed and yell. And that's not like me. It's not who I am anymore. That hasn't who I've been for a decade. And to see this part of me that sort of started to emerge out of the shadows of the guy I used to be before I even started Dad Edge was scaring me. It was scaring my wife. It was scaring my family. And I was just like, what is going on? So this all came to a head. For those of you guys who probably remember, in early January, we had kind of a horrific snowstorm come through the Midwest. And we got about 12 inches of snow on a weekend, which this is another thing too that I think we learned. On a Sunday, we woke up and it was like a foot of snow outside and we prepped for it. In other words, we went out and got snow stuff. We got sleds. We were just like, we are going to have so much fun as a family. And to be honest, we really looked at this snow. We don't get a whole lot of snow in St. Louis. So we looked at this opportunity as like, this could be the last time all 4 of our kids go sledding with us. Cause my son is 18, almost 19 years old. My other one's 17. Like in a year and a half, they're probably not going to be in this house. So we really looked at this as an opportunity. We proactively went on Amazon, bought brand new sleds and snow gear, and we just couldn't wait for the weekend because we're all going to go sledding. There's this really cool hill, like literally 100 yards from my house. We were just going to go out and have a blast. Well, about 18 months ago, we got this dog, and he's a Bernedoodle. Cute as can be, but this dog is diabolical. This dog, guys, oh my God. He wasn't that expensive, but we did spend money to train him, which basically didn't do a thing. He doesn't listen. and he pees everywhere all the time. He does this excited pee thing. The vet keeps telling us he's going to grow out of it. He hasn't grown out of it. He even does this diabolical thing where when he gets really excited and he sees new people, he jumps on them because he's so excited. And as he jumps on them, he pees on them. I'm not kidding. He pees on people. He also has been known that when we're leaving, he's got like sort of like this separation anxiety. So when we leave to go somewhere and the whole family is like getting out of the house and we're getting in the car in our garage, the dog will make a run for it because he wants to go with us, jump in the car, and then when we tell him to get out, he pees in our car. This dog has peed in our car. He's peed on the floor. He's peed on people. He has peed on my son's girlfriend. He even peed in my son's girlfriend's dad's car. Not kidding. Me, my son, his girlfriend, and her dad went out shooting one day at a range, and before we left, the dog jumped in his car because he was excited. He thought he was going and peed in it. I was mortified. I was humiliated. I was so pissed. No pun intended. I was just like, I cannot believe we even have this dog. Like, this dog is such a pain in the rear end. So fast forward. One of the things that we did this past year is we bought new furniture for our upstairs. So we have a new couch, we have a new kitchen table, that kind of thing. And my wife is like, I hope to God the dog never pees on this couch. So this one Sunday where we got all this snow, we're prepping everything. We let the dog out. The dog goes out. He's got this really crazy kind of like poodle fur. So like all the snow, you can't wipe it off. It actually gets frozen in these curls and in this fur. So I'm like trying to dry this dog off before we go sledding. I can't get him dried off. He escapes, runs on the couch, on our brand new couch, and pisses all over it. And guys, I lost my mind. I lost my mind. I was so angry that I started yelling and I was cursing and I was like, this effing dog, I'm going to kill this dog. Like, I don't even know why we have this damn dog. He ruins everything. Like, I'm yelling, I'm making a scene. And my wife is like, oh my God, like, calm down. And I was like, no, I'm not calming down. I was like, this dog has been a pain in the rear end ever since. Like, and I just went on and on and on. My oldest son heard this. Luckily, my other 3 kids did not. And I caused a scene, and I knew I did. And when I say I was filled with absolute rage, I was filled with rage. Because I'm like, dude, we just bought this couch like a month ago. Dog's already ruined it. Like, I'm ready to like be done with this dog. And I haven't been that angry in probably a decade. And my son comes upstairs. He's like, what is going on? And I yelled, not at him, but I yelled. I was like, I'm tired of this dog, like this effing dog and blah, blah, blah. And I went nuts. And my son just like looked at me like he was terrified. And what happened in that moment was a culmination of 6 months of stress, 6 months of busyness, 6 months of exhaustion, 6 months of my wife and I not having time for each other. And here's the funny thing too, is when you're normally operating at like a 9 and you drop down to like a 5, something doesn't feel good, right? So I felt like in a way I was losing the connection with my wife, which stressed me out as well. On top of it, I'm behaving poorly. I'm reacting poorly, which is not attractive to a woman whatsoever. But here was the killer. My son went outside after I did this, and I thought he was going outside to sled. I went downstairs, and we have a walkout, so I can see the backyard and all that from like the slider that we have. And I went downstairs, and I saw my son sitting on the ledge of one of our retaining walls, hunched over with his hands on his face. And I was like, oh my God, could he be so upset by how I reacted that he doesn't even know what to do with himself right now? And I was right. And that's exactly what he was doing. I'll tell you what he said afterwards, but I knew that he was upset. And I was so ashamed at how I reacted and everything that had led up to that. I went in my office and just crumbled, just lost it. And I was saying things to myself quietly, like, who the hell are you? What is going on? Like, this is not the dude you are. Like, what? You don't even deserve to do this work. Like, I'm talking like I was saying some really nasty stuff to myself quietly. And I cried. I'm not a big crier, but I cried. And it's hard for me to talk about this stuff. You guys listen to this show and, you know, you come here for resources, but I also think it's really important to talk about this stuff because we can all learn from it. So I had a conversation with my son later that night, and he told me, I asked him, I was like, did you go outside because you were upset? And he said, yes. And what he told me just killed me. And I go, what was going through your mind? And he looked at me, he goes, and he's very open with me. He goes, I'll tell you what I was thinking, but you're not going to like hearing it. It's going to hurt. And I was like, okay. He goes, I was thinking I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to be at the house anymore. I want to go to a friend's house. How can I leave? I was like, you were thinking that? He said, yeah. And he goes, and that's not the first time I've thought about that. He goes, you've been reactive and you've been angry a lot, and it's kind of killed me. He's like, I don't know if you're going to be in a good mood or a bad mood. Like, you just seem exhausted and at the end of your rope and tired. And I don't know what to do about it. And guys, I'll tell you, man, when your kid tells you that they don't want to be at your house, that's a tough one to swallow. So what did I do about it? I had an individual conversation with every single person in my family, and I owned every single bit of my part to play in that, which was pretty much all of it. I told them what I thought was happening. I basically described, I was like, you know what? I was like, this is the season that we were in. There's no excuse for it, number one. I reacted poorly. I reacted not ideally, but it is what it is. But I told them, I was like, I think I was under so much pressure, so much time constraint, so much going here, going there. And me and your mom weren't really connecting. And I just got angry over time. I just got completely fried over time. And I actually took a test to see basically how my neurotransmitters like GABA, acetylcholine, serotonin, and dopamine, like when your brain is stressed out and overwhelmed, you're not going to produce the levels of neurotransmitters that you need, which cause us to be impatient, which cause us to be angry, which causes us to forget, which lose our memory, like, because we have so much going on. And all of those levels, my neurotransmitter levels, while all my hormones are great, my weight's great, and body fat's great, my neurotransmitters were just fried. So I started taking some supplements, some serotonin supplements, some dopamine supplements, some GABA, things like that. I feel much better. But reverse engineering the whole thing, what I found is that saying yes to everything and trying to be everything to everyone at every turn and neglecting your own needs and neglecting your marriage is absolutely disastrous. And here's the funny thing. You think you're doing the right thing. You think you're doing the good things, which there is good things in there. You want to be there for your kids. But I've asked all my kids, if we were, we had all this stuff that happened, all these sports and all that, like all these great things that happened, like, was it worth it? The answer to that was no. Coming from them, the answer was no. I liked it better when our schedule as a family was more manageable, when we had more family dinners, when we spent more time together, when we laughed together, when we had game nights, when we had movie nights. And what I found is what do we have the opportunity to say no to before we say yes to it? And I'll tell you, doing this solo cast, telling you guys how I completely and totally screwed up in those arenas, and I didn't even really see it. I just saw the symptoms of it. That's not going to happen again on my watch. I've learned from it now. And my hope is, by me sharing this really authentic story with you guys, and a story that I am not proud of, is that you learn from it, that you take something from it. If you find your life with your kids, and their activities completely overwhelming, and you're neglecting yourself, you're neglecting your wife, and here's the other thing too, that I warn you about. My wife and I still spent time together, but we didn't spend connected time together. A lot of times what we found ourselves doing in the evening was we would lay in bed next to each other watching an episode of Yellowstone, and we thought that was time together, downtime, but it wasn't. And what we found is we were both so tired from everything going on, we didn't have the energy for each other, which was really freaky. Like, we had not been in that place for over a decade, like that we just didn't have the energy. Like, it actually felt better and easier, like we were doing the right thing by just decompressing in the same space and not connecting. And that was a huge miss. It should have been the other way around. Hey, let's connect for 10 minutes before we turn on Yellowstone, or let's talk for just a little while before we just decompress, right? And we didn't do that. We weren't disciplined to that. So my hope is number one, that you learn something from my mistakes, because this was a fumble, right? It's a fumble. Luckily, this fumble has been recovered, even though it's been a longer process, but it's been recovered. And what I'll tell you is that we will never enter another season like that again. where we're saying yes to everything and neither one of us have any margin for anything, not even the kids. Family dinners are important. Family time on the weekends is important. Being able to have the freedom to take your kid on a hike and not have to go to a practice is something so beneficial and fruitful for a relationship, right? Being able to take your kid out to dinner, instead of showing up to the next game or practice or recital or whatever it is, and talking with them is really okay. It's really okay. In fact, a lot of these things that we think are so important, the kids' sports, like last time I checked, it's not even 1% of kids will make it to any level that's even of any significance whatsoever. But yet when they're little, we put so much emphasis on this, when it should be the other way around. If you ask our kids, a lot of them would love to just have a little bit more of a balance with family and quality time with us versus like, let's go here, let's go there. We have this practice, we have this game, we have this recital, we have this. Over planning and overbooked is not the way to go. So big time fumble in my journey. Just obviously shows you guys you can know everything to do, right? But if you don't have your finger on the button, and if you're not aware of what's happening and you think everything's okay, that's when it's dangerous. That's when it's dangerous, because your eyes are off of it, because you think it's going to be okay. And this is where we get surprised. So hopefully this really helped you guys out. Today is the last day of January. And last time I looked, the majority of people have given up on their New Year's resolutions. But my New Year's resolution, my word for this year is margin. My second word for this year is connection. Margin and connection. That's what I've learned. That's what's needed. Margin and connection with my family. Without those things, who cares if they're winning hockey games? Who cares if they're winning wrestling meets? Who cares if they're the starting, player on a team? Doesn't matter if you don't have the family connection that you've always wanted. As I wrap up here, guys, there's just a few announcements I want to share with you after sharing this story. Even though I created a course on patience, and the funny thing was, a couple of weeks ago, I went back and took my own course. I'm like, I haven't done any of that stuff. I haven't done any of these tactics to create more space of responsiveness versus reaction. Yeah, go check out that course. Go to thedadedge.com/patience for that. I've got that for you. If you're looking to reconnect with your wife, I've got a free resource for you as well. It's 25 questions that'll make you feel like you're dating again. I started that again too. Stopped just decompressing and, side by side with my wife, and we started having conversations again, which really helped our relationship. I'll have a link for you guys in the show notes for that as well. Also, in a couple months here in April 12th, 2025, Holly Ridge, North Carolina, we're doing the Rite of Passage, the Squire event. I'll have a link for you guys in the show notes for that. Also, the Men's Forge, May 1st through the 4th, with Ryan Mickler, Order of Man, Connor Beaton of Man Talks, Matt Bordeaux of Apogee Dads, and Matt Vincent, Not Dead Yet. Our 5 communities are coming together for an incredible gathering of men, and something that's going to be so much fun. Go check that out. I have a link for you in the show notes as well. And for those of you guys who have daughters between the ages of 11 and 17, I've got that daddy-daughter retreat. Only got a few spots left, but I'd grab them if you want to bring your daughter out. If you want to connect with her, we're going to be right by Mount Zion National Park. I'm doing some hiking, doing some incredible fire pits. We got this incredible Airbnb. It's going to be awesome. So head on over to thedadedge.com/Friday 193 for this super authentic, vulnerable peek behind the curtain of my messy life when it happens. Thedadedge.com/Friday 193 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday 193 for this show. You know what I'd love though? If my message today hits you in any way and you're like, and all you're sitting there thinking is like, holy crap, dude. Yeah, me too. Do me a favor. Shoot me a message on Instagram. Just shoot me a DM. Just say, hey man, this part of the podcast really hit me because, or anything like that. If it hits you in any way, let me know. I would just love to hear. So today was a fumble, but last time I checked, we can recover. Fumbles are always recovered by the team who dropped it or by the other team, but a fumble is usually always recovered, and our fumbles are recovered too. Gentlemen, go out, live legendary. Take care.